and he had a lot to do with that. He really, really groomed this ride or die mentality. And I got suckered into believing that this ride or die was considered loyal. That was
Hmm.
me being loyal, and that I, at all costs, would forgive him for anything and everything. He could cheat, he could spit on me, he could be physically and sexually abusive to me, he could threaten me, he could humiliate me, he could do all these things, but he knew that I was his ride or die. I'd always be there. And I mean, he would actually say those words, ride or die.
Mm,
And and that's not ride or die. Like, that's
no,
that's not how that works.
exactly. Hello, hello, and welcome to Journey of a Fearless Female. I am your host, Paola Rosser, and this week my guest is Beany Chalfant. She's a teacher, a mom, a coach by profession, and most recently, a domestic violence survivor and an advocate. She is bringing awareness and support to women who are in the thick of it, as well as those who are recovering from it. She tells her story after a decade she spent in an abusive, narcissistic relationship, which she finally broke free. Everybody, please welcome Beany. Hi.
Hi. Thank
Oh
you
my
so much
God.
for having me.
I am so excited to have this conversation. I reached out to Beany via TikTok because she was posting videos of how abusive he was. And I just remember one of the videos he came in and he's yelling at you and you're recording him and he's like punching stuff and hitting things. And it just made my skin crawl because
Yeah.
I understand that type of abuse. And I reached out and I said, "Are you willing to tell your story?" And it took a while for you to get to this point. So I'm honored to share this space with you. So let's start from the beginning. Where did your
Thank
fearless
you.
female journey begin?
Thank you. When you first reached out to me, I was new to having exposed him. And so it was all still really fresh. And I had escaped, but there was a lot. There was a lot.
Yeah,
There was a lot with that.
there's always a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, this started. I was a pretty naive. I married my high school sweetheart. He was not abusive. I was with him for 25 years, and he was a decent man. Not a great husband, but a decent man. And from him, I went to this. And so
Mm,
my life was kind of lived in a bubble, and I didn't realize that people like this existed.
yeah.
Um, and I was very naive to it all. And I got suckered in good. But having said that, he's a professional. My
Yeah.
abuser has been doing this his entire life.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Well, talk
and
about the day you met him and like,
yeah,
were you newly divorced?
I was not divorced yet.
Oh,
I was
okay.
not divorced yet, and I met him in the gym. I hired him as my trainer, and
Oh,
that was how we got really close. And lines got crossed, and you know things happened that I am not proud of. I am. It's 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 tough to talk about. It's
yeah.
embarrassing. It's embarrassing, and it's humiliating that I let a man like this infiltrate my life. Uh,
Here's the thing. I think that I know that you're embarrassed and that you feel those feelings. And I tell everyone it can happen to anyone.
yeah,
And that's the
no,
thing.
I
It's
know
like,
that.
yeah, it could happen to anyone. And that's the thing. People think like women who are in abusive relationships are easily manipulated. They come from trauma and abuse but no, it can happen. You would be surprised women who are doctors, lawyers,
Yeah,
police officers who are in abusive relationships. It really has to do with the perpetrator. Like you
yeah,
said, they are really good at this craft,
yeah,
at learning how to groom you as like any abuser does, and
yeah,
they love bomb you and they
yeah.
catch you in a place of vulnerability.
Absolutely. And I had come off of losing a child. I was not happy in my marriage. I had all these things. And
Mm.
you know, I say that in the same breath that I tell you that I was a leader in my community. I was strong-willed. I had opinions. I didn't take shit from people. And still it happened to me. I was financially secure. I was all the things that that I thought at the time would protect me from somebody like this.
Yeah.
But it happened to me. So yeah, so we became close in the gym setting, and then that was kind of how it all started. Which, by the way, this is where he got all of his women. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so it was he's a black belt in jujitsu. He is trained his entire life. He played football in college. He boxed, and he did Muay Thai, and he was incredibly strong. So physically, I had no chance. But I can tell you that a month into it with him, I tried to break it off. And I said, it's kind of run its course. Enough is enough. We're going to part our ways. And he said to me, "Oh no, I'm not done with you."
Wow.
And at the time, my sick brain was like, "Oh, he loves me."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, he really likes me. He really wants to, keep spending time with me. And that was, like I said, my sick brain at the time thought that that was love right off the bat.
Hmm.
And um all of his, where are you? And text me and call me and don't talk to this person and don't talk to that person, and all that obsessiveness about you. I took as, oh, he's so interested in where I am, and he wasn't the case.
Yeah.
That
They're
was
really
not
good at,
the case.
yeah, they're really good at making it like they really care about you.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, they're just really
yeah,
concerned
yeah,
about you and where you are. And then you
yeah,
do, and especially when you're in that vulnerable state, like you said earlier in the interview, you said you had just lost a child, you're not
yeah.
in a really good relationship. And if you're not in a good relationship with your husband and he doesn't care where
Right,
you are, or he's not
right,
sending you
exactly,
little love
exactly.
notes of like, what did you eat today? Or
Yeah,
where are you? Are you
right.
okay? Like you start to think like, wow, this guy really does love me more than my husband. So it really is a game for them, and they know which cards to play, and they know that women who are desperate for that love and attention, and it just doesn't go for just women. I mean, this is how they
Yeah,
get little children too, is they groom the child like, I'm the one that's going to love you, and I'm the one that cares about you, I'm the one that wants to know what's going on in your life. So it really is just one of their game cards,
yeah,
to play.
yeah, yeah. And he played it, and I bought into it, and I'm, you know, in my brain, one of my biggest mistakes right off the get go was that I didn't trust my gut. My gut told me right off, something feels off. It was like the way he spoke to me every once in a while was like, oh gosh, I never talked to my husband like that, or
Hmm.
um, and I didn't listen to my gut. But then one of my second mistakes was that I let my pride get in the way of breaking free really early on.
Mm,
Because I said to myself, I made this choice, I'm with him, I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to lead by example, and he's going to see how this works.
yeah.
And and then I saw his potential, and I kept thinking, oh, he potentially could be so great, and none of that panned out. For
Oh,
10 years, none of that panned out. But then, after, it was probably about 7 years in, where the shit kind of hit the fan, and a lot of his lies came to the surface. And that was when I finally realized, it's when I started looking up what the word narcissist meant. At that point, I didn't even know what it meant. Um,
mm,
and I started reading, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm in the middle of this.
yeah.
And unfortunately, it took me 3 more years to actually get out. And, there were several reasons that it took me 3 more years, but my physical safety was one.
Yeah.
The safety of my children was another. My financially, he kept destroying my income.
Mm.
That was his big threat to me always. And then there's the trauma bond, and I definitely was trauma bonded to him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely, felt this like I can't live without him. Um and I loved him.
Mm.
I loved him, and I gave up a lot for him, and I would have done anything for him. Um and he knew that, and he exploited that for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but the abuse started really early. It started early on. It was not every day. It was not even every month, but sporadically it would be, throwing a drink at me, or,
Wow.
um,
At a restaurant or at home?
both. He did it both. There were many nights that I would spend sleeping in my car on the side of the road somewhere because I was afraid to come home.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
he would threaten to kill me. And mind you, he's a world champion black belt in jujitsu. I don't have a chance um,
Yeah.
physically with him, but he laid in wait in my home, hid behind a door, and um, he would push me into the headboard, and hurt my collarbone, and he was pretty good at making sure that I didn't have any physical bruises, especially
Yeah.
at the beginning. Towards the end, he got a lot less careless and a lot more angry. um, but at the beginning, he made sure that none of those things were visible to others.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell me about how the very first time that something happened to you, what was going through your mind? Like, and what was his reaction afterwards?
So the very first time he did something to me, he what I remember about it was that I just thought that he had just it was just a one-time thing for him. Like, I just thought, oh my gosh, he's lost his mind.
Mhm.
And this was just a one-off, like that this wouldn't happen again. And quite honestly, the apology and the several weeks after um, were great. They were great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was what, I was like, okay, so, this is how I know he can be. So I was always searching for that apology, that 2 week of apology that I got after something happened was what I was always searching for, as my norm. And
Yeah.
of course, that never happened either. That
Yeah.
was never normal.
Yeah, and I love that you said earlier that it wasn't every day. It was like maybe once a month or, and that's the thing. It's like it eventually starts to get bigger and bolder and harder to get out. And then, like you said, you have already fallen in love with him. And
Yeah.
so then you think to yourself, like, well, I can love him so much that he's going to stop doing this, or he's going to change, or he's going to love me back so much that he's never going to do this.
Yeah.
And you create these ideas and these stories in your head. And then the way you started the relationship, you also have that pride or that ego telling you, well, you made this choice. You
Right.
have to stay here. And that's the thing that, when you're in an abusive relationship, you kind of almost convince yourself that
Hmm.
this is where you're supposed to stay, and then you also think like, well, I did this, so I deserve this, right?
Yeah.
And so I should stay. And this is what was meant for me. But no matter if you cheated or didn't cheat or whatever, no one deserves to be
No.
treated that
No.
way.
No, and he had a lot to do with that. He really, really groomed this ride or die mentality. And I got suckered into believing that this ride or die was considered loyal. That was
Mhm.
me being loyal, and that I, at all costs, would forgive him for anything and everything. He could cheat, he could spit on me, he could be physically and sexually abusive to me, he could threaten me, he could humiliate me, he could do all these things, but he knew that I like I was his ride or die. I'd always be there. And I mean, he would actually say those words, ride or die.
Mm,
And, and that's not ride or die. Like
no,
that's not how that works.
exactly.
Yeah,
And you
that's
weren't
not,
about to die
no,
for this
no.
whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not loyalty. And it took me many years to figure it all out. But like I said, the 7 years in was kind of when everything really hit the fan, where he became a lot more careless. Um, his abuse became more bold.
Mm.
Um, the sexual abuse happened more often. And then at the very end, I was diagnosed with cancer,
Mm.
and we were kind of on the outs, but it was literally, I could tell you the cycle. It was, we'd get in a fight, I'd kick him out, I'd go no contact, he'd be gone for, he'd give me no contact for 3 or 4 days, I'd spend another probably 4 or 5 days of avoiding him, and trying to avoid all of his calls. And then he'd get angry and he'd threaten my children, or he'd threaten to do something to my family, or he'd kick in my car, or he'd break into my home, or he'd and I just would say, that what you don't like, having him next to me was safer than having him
Mm.
away from me. And that cycle happened for years, literally 3 years that happened.
How
Where
did your family or friends respond? Like, were
Yeah, it
they,
was tough. I lost my family for almost a decade. I lost my family. My mother was kind of in and out with, she didn't really know what to do. She was trying to be supportive, but yet she needed to have her own boundaries. My sister and my brother cut me off completely. My children, when they were old enough, my oldest one cut me off and told me, as long as he is a part of your life, I will not be. And honestly, good for him.
yeah,
Good for him for sticking to that boundary. He's 25 now. But at the time, he was 15, and didn't, well, he was younger than 15. He was like 13. um, and so I was thankfully able to protect my children from him, and they really did not have a whole lot of interaction with him. But it was hard, and I've spent the last almost 2 years now trying to repair all of those relationships. And
yeah.
thankfully, I'm very close with my mother now, and I see her, talk to her on FaceTime every day. And I see my son whenever I'm in town. And my other son's he's actually in Indonesia right now. But yeah, I've been 2 years trying to repair all of that.
Yeah.
Been tough for sure.
Oh, I know it's tough. I know it's tough. I've been there before myself. And
Yeah,
I talk to people all the time. I have multiple women on my podcast about leaving narcissistic abusive relationships. And we talk about all the flags and everything. And even so, if, like you said, you read the book and you started to realize, wait a minute, he does that, he does this, he does that. It does take you a while for you to finally have the courage and the bravery to say enough is enough. And like you said,
yeah,
even though you read that book 3 years, it took you 3 more years to
yeah,
finally like untangle and untether yourself from him, because you live together, you have finances together, you own things together. It's hard. We create this idea that it's so hard to leave,
yeah,
but in reality, all of it is pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Once you look back, you're like, wow, I could have done that a lot faster, or a
yeah,
lot, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but you
Well,
tend to
for me,
convince yourself, right, to stay.
yeah, for me, it got to the point where I was a prisoner in my own home. He wasn't living with me, but he wouldn't allow me to see anyone else. my business, like, even training people outside of a gym. He would roll up. He would just show up, and he would embarrass me in front of my clients. And so it just got to a point where I felt like I was a prisoner. And that was kind of when I got on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
It was when I started scrolling, and I thought, if you look at my TikTok, you can see kind of the progression of it all. It started off as fitness. From there, it went to, you can kind of see a lot of what I put in my fitness posts had a lot to do with my own life. It just didn't, I wasn't specific about
Yeah.
what was happening. And then it got into my cancer. And then there's kind of a pause, and then you won't see me for a little while. And that was kind of when I ended up escaping. But my point in that was, I was a prisoner in my own home. I was stuck on the couch, and I was like, you know what? I had just signed a lease by myself for the very first time in my life. I was escaping one home to another, and he found me.
Mm.
Combed the neighborhood and found my car and found my new home. I had moved in the middle of the night, so we wouldn't know where I was. I mean, it was a whole thing. But I ended up thinking to myself, you know what? I need to go work somewhere and live for free. What can I do? Maybe there's a farm, or there's a ranch, or somewhere where I can live for free, pay my rent here in San Diego, and just get away. I just need to create some physical distance.
Yeah.
And I made a comment on a woman's post who had a similar story, where she escaped her own abuse of a narcissist, and she bought a farm in Florida. And I made a comment on her post, and she commented back. We went back and forth a couple times. We hopped on a phone call, and like 45 minutes later, she said, "Why don't you just come visit? Just pack your bags and come visit." And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I've got nothing. I got nothing else. I think I'll do it. And so I bought a ticket. And in the time that I bought the ticket and I left, I was still back and forth with him. I had seen him the weekend before, and I was gonna cancel on her multiple times. And then finally, I just said, you know what? No matter what happens, I'm going. And so I went. I packed my bags for a week. I didn't tell anybody where I was going. I didn't tell my mother, my children, my friends. Nobody knew. And I stayed with this woman on her farm here in Florida, and I slept a lot.
Oh, yeah, because you were
Yeah,
tired. You were
yeah,
probably, your body was probably on fight or flight for the
yeah,
last 7 years, and your
yeah,
body needed to finally
yeah,
rest without having
yeah,
to look behind you or trying to figure out if he's going to come or show up
yeah,
unexpectedly. So
yeah,
your body was like, oh, we could
yeah.
rest.
Finally. So I took care of animals, and I slept a lot, and I tried to create some new income for myself. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to go home. And I had a girlfriend pack up all of my clothes. She shoved everything from my apartment into my car, and I had my car shipped to me, and I never left. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. And then I met somebody. I met somebody here in Florida, and now I'm getting married.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Oh my God. What a beautiful ending. I really love that.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to talk about like when you decided finally, okay, even though you said you were still wishy-washy going back, what would you tell someone first? What would you tell someone, a family member, a daughter, a son, or a friend who knows someone who's in a narcissistic relationship and she is not trying to see the red flags? What would you tell them? Like, what would be your advice to them? Like, for them to stay patient, or how to
Yeah.
guide them to seeing the red flags?
This is hard. This is a hard place to be, because I had many people that were trying to show me the light. And and I knew I knew what was happening. Um, and I still just was not ready. And there was nothing that anybody was going to tell me that was going to change my mind.
Yeah.
It was my journey. It was my, I had to decide when enough was enough. And so what I can say is what I am most grateful for the people that were around me that knew of my situation, was that they were they were supportive. They didn't understand. They didn't understand, um, but they still had compassion for my situation,
Yeah.
and they still told me, that they would be there for me. Now, some people in my life said, like my family, mostly said, no, like
Hmm.
this is a hard no for us. We will not be a part of your life as long as you're a part of his. Um, and so that was hard. Um, but everybody's got boundaries, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody's got to figure out what their boundary is. And for my family, that was their boundary. Um, for me, because I've already gone through this, I would tell somebody that, I am always here for you, no matter what. When you decide that you're ready, I will be here to help you.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, I don't think that there's anything that anybody can say to somebody who's in the middle of a trauma bond and the cycle of abuse that is going to make them like magically see the light. Like
Yeah.
it's it's your own it's your own deal, and you
Yeah.
have to go through it. And for me, I had to feel like I had done absolutely everything I could possibly do to make this work. And for me, that was 10 years, unfortunately. you
Yeah.
know
No, I get it. I have a couple of friends and clients who are in those type of relationships, and it's hard for me to not want to like just go and kidnap them
yeah,
and put
yeah,
them in my room and keep them in there like cold turkey,
yeah.
because they have to come to that decision on their own. And I even though I take their calls and there's multiple phone calls of like, he did this again, or I don't know what I'm going to do, and they're crying, and I just have to sit there and listen and have that space for them to process their feelings. And like you said, they have to come to the light on their own. I will be there and sit with them in the darkness, but I can't force them to the light. I can't force my clients to go drink the water. I can show them where the water is, but I can't force them to drink the water. And that's the thing. It's like, if you are listening and you have a friend or a sister or a mom or an aunt or a coworker that you know is in an abusive relationship, all you can do is be a loving source for them to find healing. Because honestly, there, it has to come from within for them to say enough is enough, for them to feel worthy enough or deserving enough of a different love, like a
Mhm.
more healthy love.
Yeah,
It really does have to come from within, and you can't force the process. You
right.
can't, like you can't make them see the light. You can't. They have to do it on their own. And sometimes it takes for them to get to the bottom of the barrel for them to finally say, okay, enough is enough, you know?
And the other thing that I really struggled with was the people that I lost, that just passed a lot of judgment, on me. And so I would say that if you are trying to help somebody who is in the midst of all of this, be sure to keep your judgment, to
At
yourself.
bay. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
easy to judge when you've never been a part of it. Like for me, I don't judge my friends because, or my clients, because I know what it was like. I
yeah,
know how they get such a grip on you,
yeah,
and they tell you all the right things. Like I
yeah,
remember my ex used to tell me, I love you to the moon and back. Like after he called me a cunt and spit at me in
right.
the beach, and I'm like, wait a minute, and it was very confusing. They were really, really dark, but then they would be really, really loving and kind. And then you would ache for those moments,
Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's like, they only see the light of them. They don't see the darkness as much until it envelops them to the point where they're like, enough is enough. So just be patient, create that loving and safe environment, because if you do judge them, if you do try to tell them, they're going to never confide in you,
Yeah.
because they're going to say, oh, she's, I remember I had a best friend who would always tell me my ex-boyfriend was abusive and it was wrong. And I would tell him like a fool, that, this is what so-and-so said about you. And he would say, oh, she's just jealous. She's just jealous of your relationship. Look, she doesn't have anybody and you have me, and she's just jealous. And I believed him. And I really believed that, oh, my best friend was jealous that I was in this quote unquote loving relationship. And so I lost a friend because of that. We're no longer friends. We were friends since elementary school, and we stopped being friends after that relationship. And so keep your judgment
Yeah.
at bay, because they truly are brainwashed. Your friends are brainwashed. Your clients are brainwashed. This narcissistic hold that they have on them is like no other.
Yeah.
And you really are so brainwashed to believe that, you really are in love, and this is love hurts. Like you say, some people
Yeah.
say some stupid things like ride or die, and you
Right.
want to prove that you have that loyalty, that commitment, that you are that girl that's going to love them forever and you're not going
Right.
to leave them. They are hurt, wounded men
Yeah.
that have so much like unresolved trauma that they don't know up from down, and you're just caught in their whirlwind.
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely leaves, a path of destruction. I've had people from his past high school contact me since I went public with everything. His high school girlfriend, his college girlfriend, I probably have 5 or 6 other women that have contacted me since I exposed him and
Wow.
told me their stories.
Oh.
So he is just a serial abuser, and
What
I
led you to expose him and to post
yeah,
those videos on TikTok?
yeah. So now I'm in Florida now. I've left. He found me here in Florida,
Mm.
with because I created an LLC for myself. So he found what area I was in Florida. He he was he emailed me and said, I want you to meet me here at this time, this date. I want you to wear this, bring this. Like it was like.
Wow.
And at this point, I had gone no contact, and I hadn't contacted him in months, or responded to anything. And then he showed up where he thought I was, and he sent me a video, and he said, I'm here. Where are you, little girl? And I just was like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. Like he
Mm.
flew all the way across the country to try to find me. And I ended up I had to go back to California for a surgery. And again, he was stalking me, driving by my mom's house and calling like no caller IDs. And so I finally just was like, you know what? I've had enough. And I walked up to the park across the street from my mom's, and I just put my phone on and just, bleh, I just said
Mm.
everything. And I did that to gain my own power back. I
Yes.
I did it to get some of the power that I had lost for so long. And I thought, you know what? If he is going to do this to me, if he's going to continue to do this to me, I'm going to tell everyone we know.
Yeah.
We were very connected within the training community in San Diego, and the boxing community. I used to teach boxing, and we were very connected.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I told my story first, and then he continued to contact me. And after I told my story and he continued, I said, you know what? I've got so much in my phone. I have so much proof over the last decade of what he's done to me. I'm going for it. I'm just going to start putting it all out there.
I love it. Honestly,
Yeah.
when I saw you posting those videos, I was like, yeah, go girl, show everybody what his true colors are. Because what happened to me when my ex-boyfriend choked me out on the side of a restaurant because I caught him cheating on me. I posted it on Facebook and people were like, don't put your business out there. Like, how dare you? You could damage his life. Damage his life. He's putting hands on women's necks. Like, people need to know this is the type of man he is.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because my ex was married before, and I know for a fact he was probably abusing her too. But she just completely disappeared from the face of the earth. And for me, it's like, if she would have posted those things of what
Uh-huh.
happened to her, then I probably would have never been in a relationship with him. And that's why it's so important,
Yeah.
for us to be like, why are we protecting them?
Yeah.
Why are
Yeah.
we protecting the abuser when they weren't protecting you? Like, people need to know. And like you said, it probably gave those other 6 or 7 women the courage to say, wow, it happened to me too. And, and it made them feel not so isolated in their suffering. I love that you posted those videos because they need to see
Yeah.
what he is and who he is and how he acts. And, and I'm so proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. He opened a gym. He had his own namesake gym. And after I exposed him, he rebranded himself. He took his name off of that gym and he created a new name for the gym. Um, and I can't even tell you how many women contacted me, not women that he had relationships with, but old clients of his or ours, or people that used to take our classes, or um, I had countless women contact me and tell me what their
Story.
interaction was with him and how something felt off. Or I had one of his old clients was in high school
Oh
at
my
the
gosh.
and she contacted me and said that how inappropriate, the inappropriateness that happened with the two of them, and how he was contacting um, her her friends on Instagram, her high school friends on Instagram. So you know what? Fuck him forever.
Yes.
Like I will never.
I love you for that. Yes. No, honestly, I just watched that movie Betrayal of the woman who's like, it's on Hulu, Betrayal. And it's like the woman who thought she had the perfect husband. And she comes home from like a vacation, and sorry, spoiler alert, if you want to watch it, fast forward this part of the podcast or the YouTube. She comes home from like a vacation, and he's sitting in the couch and he's going to get arrested, and the cops literally come, and she's like, what's going on? She's so confused because she's thinking this guy is like the most amazing human being ever. Turns out he was having sex with one of his students. He's a teacher. And the student, she received a lot of blowback. Like, how dare you? He's such a nice guy. Like, he's such a great man, blah, blah, blah. He's so kind. He's so nice. And then as you're watching the documentary, you see these other students who were like, now looking back, he was a little bit too nice. And he always asked me to meet him for coffee. And I just never, and God only knows what would have happened if I went to go see him and go have that coffee. And that's the thing, like, we as women need to expose these men,
Yeah.
because when you do that, when you have the courage and the bravery, and yes, you might get some blowback, but there's going to be other women who, like us, who are going to rally against, like, or rally around you and show you support and empathy and compassion, because we've been there and we know what it's like. But when you say your story, when you tell people, this is the man who did this to me, then that man, it takes his power away, and it takes him the ability to do it to someone else. So yes, you might get blowback from people who are going to not believe you, but you're going to save multiple women from thousands of women from experiencing the same trauma, abuse, and pain that you've endured.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, initially it was to protect myself. I thought if I exposed him right now, he'll stop contacting me. And then it was, you know what? I need to protect other women. From him specifically, I need to protect other women. And then of course there's that part of you that, needs justice. And,
Mhm.
I don't know that there will ever be justice for him, for the things that he's done to me. It so that's a tough one. It's a tough one for me to keep at bay. That I've really struggled with, being vindictive.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I get you. I'm right there with you. Oh
yeah,
no,
I mean, I'm like I said, fuck him forever,
yeah.
because there is nothing that can happen to him that will, justify or make what he did to me better.
Yeah.
Um, what's done is done.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
so it's
hard to forgive your abuser. It takes a long
yeah,
time to
I struggle with
forgive.
that too. I struggle with that one. I think that I can not forgive and move on.
Yeah. But the
And
forgiveness isn't for him. It's for
no,
us. It's for us to like finally like
yeah,
move
I'm
forward.
struggling with that for sure. Because I definitely feel like I just want to move on from it.
Yeah.
I don't, not sure. I'm not sure what forgiveness looks like for me yet.
Yeah. Exactly. The further you get away from this, the longer you'll be able to find like you're not only going to forgive yourself, but you're going to forgive him because honestly, like if you pull the lens back, and this is the thing that I try to do when someone has hurt me really bad, is the fact that I try to pull the lens back to when they were a child.
Mhm.
In before they became the monster that they became, at one point they were a light in this world and someone made them dark. Children aren't born being abusers or being racists or being, negative people. We are beautiful lights when we come into this world. It all depends on our circumstances, our environments that change us. So I try to pull it back to that lens because that helps me. But yeah, I mean, take your time because it really, the forgiveness is for us. It's
Yeah,
really not for them. Like, like how you said earlier, hold on a second, my headphones keep falling, but like you said earlier, fuck him and fuck him
yeah,
for life. Like,
yeah,
like honestly, like I truly believe that the energy you put out is the energy you get back. And eventually it will come back to him. It will. It just the universal law states it, the law of cause and effect. You cannot put that much negative energy. I mean, if he put the same energy in stalking you to his business,
right, right.
right? The amount of hours and
Yeah,
painstaking like travel and all that stuff to stalk you to his business, he'd be a lot more successful. I
yeah.
don't know. But anyways, as we wrap up this episode, what would you say to the women who are listening? What would be your nugget of wisdom?
So I think my nugget of wisdom would be, you're not stuck. You think you're stuck, but you're not. And you you always have a choice to do something different. And whatever you're not choosing or whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And um and so I felt stuck for so long. And had I not felt stuck, I could have saved myself some years of my life.
Mm.
And nothing financially changed for me. Nothing was different when I finally decided to escape. It just was me deciding to go anyway. Like, just do it anyway. You are not stuck.
Mm,
It's
I love
always
that.
a choice.
Yes, there
You might
is.
not like the choice. You might not like the choice or the consequences. Like for me, I moved away from my family. I lost my business. I lost my home. I lost a lot.
Mhm.
Um, but I had other choices always, and I didn't choose them up until I did.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if you're listening, all the things that you might lose are temporary. You know, you can rebuild your business, you can get a new home, you can rebuild your finances. Like she said, she's already found somebody who she's in love with and she's going to get married to. Oh, you're married? You're married, right?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I'm gonna get married. Yep,
gonna get married. You're gonna find another love, you know, but the one thing that you cannot get back is your life, you know. So the more time you spend in these relationships, if the more time you're losing, you know. And when she said her son was 13 at the time, she lost all that time with her son. She lost all that time with her mom. And those are the things that you're going to lose the most. You know, that's what's going to hurt the most is the time that you've wasted. I always think about that, like the amount of time I wasted, you know, trying to make them see the light. And that's the thing. It's like, don't waste your time anymore because that's one thing you can't get back. And I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a huge percentage of women who don't survive the abuse and end up dying at the hands of their abuser. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
all right. Well, it was an incredible episode. I'm so happy we finally got a chance to be on
I know.
here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
How can my audience find you? I know where to find you because I follow you on TikTok. So give them all your details.
I'm on TikTok at Beany's Fitness, Beanys Fitness. I'm also on Instagram at the same handle, and I'm on Facebook, Beany Chalfant.
Oh, I love you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual mentor, you can book a free discovery call with me at www.fearlessfemale.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fearlessfemale_coach, subscribe to my YouTube channel at fearlessfemale, or find me on TikTok. I'm under at paola.rosser. And if you love this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review. I read every single review, and I truly appreciate the time you spend writing it.